Once upon a time, in a busy town of Olu, there lived a woman named Ijemma. She owns a local restaurant in the heart of the town. As a matter of fact, her restaurant was one of the most popular restaurants in Olu, attracting both the indigents of Olu and the people from neighboring towns. Her restaurant was a simple structure made of blocks, cement, and zinc roof. But it was always filled with people from dawn till dusk. The aroma of her dishes wafted through the air, drawing in travelers from distant lands. Every meal she prepared was a symphony of flavors, rich and unforgettable. She offers delicacies like abacha, varieties of local soups, cow leg, and other local delicacies. Ijemma is a beautiful woman, graceful as the river that flowed beside the village, with a dark skin that glows under the sun. She is a single woman, and many of the men who visit her restaurant would lock horns with each other in a bid to get her attention. But she never seemed to be interested. Ijemma's restaurant continued to flourish, and the tales of her delicious meals spread like wildfire across the town and beyond. Cars, bicycles, and bikes would line up outside her restaurant, and the queues are always very long, leaving one to wonder what might really be used to make these meals that could attract such crowd. Ijemma has 2 domestic staff who helps her around the kitchen in preparing the meals, but she makes all the food herself. Some of them wondered why Ijemma would not let anyone into her main kitchen, but they didn't have the courage to ask her any questions. Inside Ijemma's main kitchen, there are layers of pots packed by the corner, and there are big drums of water that have padlocks on them. That is where Ijemma stores the water for her cooking. Her ingredients are also stored in an overhead locker directly above the drums of water. The key to her main kitchen and the ones that open the locker on the drum of water are always secured in the pocket of her apron, out of anyone's reach. Every evening, Ijemma's workers will cut the vegetables and meat, pound the ingredients, and prepare any other mixtures for the food. Ijemma will store them away in her main kitchen. And in the morning, as early as 5 a.m., Ijemma will arrive at her restaurant. She will then proceed to prepare the soup and any other food in her menu with the already prepared ingredients from the previous evening. And by 10 a.m., she opens up her restaurant for her customers, who would have already queued up outside, waiting for her to open the doors. Because of the nature of food served in Ijemma's restaurant, the customers always have to eat with their hands. So each day, as our customers settle to eat, they will first wash their hands in a large stainless basin filled with cool water before they will be served their plate of food. And after eating, they will be given another bowl of water to wash off their hands before leaving. When the customers leave, Ijemma will collect the bowls they wash their hands in and turn the dirty water into some clay pots she kept at the backyard of her restaurant. She also instructed her workers to always collect the water in the bowl after the customers had left and pour the dirty water into the clay pots at the backyard. She told them it's better to collect the dirty water and dispose them at the end of the day, instead of littering the water everywhere. And so her workers didn't think too much to it and obeyed her instructions. Unknown to them, Ijemma would carry the clay pot into her main kitchen and fill the drums in her inner kitchen with the dirty water from the clay pots. She would then use the water to prepare her meals early the next morning, and that is how she keeps her customers coming back. Ijemma belongs to a secret society known as Umuabala, a group of women who had mastered the ancient art of spirit binding. They could whip the spirits of men and women, holding them captive against their will. The food at Ijemma's restaurant was irresistible. Those who ate it would find themselves dreaming of it, craving it day and night. No matter how far they traveled, they would always return to Olu, unable to stay away. They thought it was the taste, the spices, the warmth of the dishes that brought them back. But it was the bond Ijemma had woven between their spirits and her kingdom once they taste the food she cooked with the water they had used to wash their hands. As time went by, one fateful day, one of Ijemma's staff named Uka was washing the dishes at the backyard. As she was making her way back into the restaurant, she mistakenly kicked down the clay pot where the dirty water they had collected for the day was stored, spilling all the water. Ijemma was so furious that she almost ran mad. She cursed out Uka and abused her all through the evening until the close of work. The staff were surprised because the pot only had dirty water in it and shouldn't warrant such outburst from their boss, Ijemma. Uka apologized to Ijemma and promised her she would be more careful next time. The next day, Ijemma's restaurant was almost empty. She had very few customers, and her neighbors and staff were surprised. She couldn't use enough water from her customers to cook, hence why she had very few customers that day. Ijemma instructed her staff very strictly to collect the water from the few customers they had and turn it into the clay pots in the backyard. At this point, Uka was beginning to be suspicious of her boss, Ijemma. She decided to observe more carefully from that day forward. The next day, before 9 a.m. in the morning, their restaurant was filled to the brim with people from different towns and villages, far and near. Ijemma was all smiles as she served her customers their preferred meals. She was also ensuring that the water they had washed their hands with were being collected properly. Uka kept her eyes open and played ignorance, even though her curiosity was out of the roof at that point. I have never seen this water being thrown out before, even after we had closed for the day. Our boss still asks us to leave the water in the pot, but when we return by morning, it would have disappeared. When and how does she throw it out? Uka queried herself. After much deliberations, Uka decided to find out more. She and her colleague collected the dirty water and poured them carefully into the pot at the backyard. They served the customers well until they had no food left to serve. They cleared up the restaurant and prepared some ingredients for the cooking the next day. When they were done, they went home as usual, leaving just Ijemma at the restaurant. Unknown to Ijemma, Uka, one of her domestic staff, hid in the nearby bush, observing her. Ijemma carried the clay pot into her secret kitchen and emptied the water into the drums. Uka watched on from her hiding place, confused as ever. She knew there was more to it, and so she decided to be out as early as possible to find out what happens after the water in the clay pot is transferred to the drums in Ijemma's secret kitchen. Very early the next morning, around 5 a.m., Uka arrived at the restaurant and hid herself in the bush nearby. After a few minutes, Ijemma arrived and went in to start preparing the food for the day. When she started cooking, Uka tiptoed to the door of the secret kitchen and watched Ijemma as she took water from the drum to cook. She was saying some strange incantations as she prepared the food. Uka was shocked to the bones at her discovery. She thought of how best to expose this to the town chiefs, and then an idea struck her. By 10 a.m., when the restaurant opened, customers were queuing up to eat from Ijemma's kitchen. Uka was so disgusted, but she already had a plan on how to expose the hideous crime Ijemma is committing. On the fateful day, Uka came to Ijemma's restaurant, just like every other day. She had informed some young men in the village, and so they were on standby as well. They had lots of customers as usual. Uka and the other staff were collecting the dirty water used by the customers to wash their hands, and they were storing it in the clay pot at the backyard. At the end of the day, when the restaurant was closed, the staff went home as usual, leaving Ijemma behind to round up and close up the restaurant. Unknown to her, Uka and some other youths of the village were laying ambush, waiting to expose her evil. Ijemma carried the clay pot inside her secret kitchen. She unlocked the drums and emptied the dirty water in the clay pots inside the drums. She locked it back when she was done and closed up her restaurant. By early morning the next day, the youths were out, laying ambush to find out if everything Uka told them was true. Ijemma arrived at the restaurant to prepare food for the day, as always. She opened up and went into the kitchen to commence cooking. The youths watched from a distance in disbelief as she opened up the drums and started cooking with the water from these drums. They couldn't believe their eyes, and at this point, they knew her evil has to be exposed. They all jumped out from their hiding place to accost Ijemma on the act. She was shocked to see some youths in her kitchen. They dragged her out and demanded for the keys to open the remaining drums. The youths snatched the key from her and opened up the drums. The stench from the drums set their heads spinning. They looked into the drums to realize that the water was filled with mucus and maggots, and yet she made her meals with it. They ransacked the whole kitchen and discovered some charms tied in red pieces of cloth. Ijemma was forced to confess that she uses the charms and the water as ingredients in her food, making her customers come back for more. The youths raised an alarm in the town that morning, and Ijemma was paraded round the village with the shocking tales spreading throughout the town of Olu and the neighboring towns. She was brought before the king of Olu, who banished Ijemma from the town into the evil forest, where she would live out her remaining life away from human interaction. The story of Ijemma's kitchen was told for generations. A cautionary tale about the dangers of eating outside of one's home.